Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel Legal Decipher. In the previous video, we discussed about Chapter 9 of the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973. If you have not seen that video, you can go and check it. The link is in the description below. Today, we will discuss about the contents of Chapter 10 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. We'll go through the chapter and try to understand how the criminal procedure is followed and how the criminal courts work. If you are new here, please like and subscribe to the channel to get video notifications. So let's get started. So today we are going to learn about chapter 10. So chapter 10 talks about maintaining public order and tranquility. Now the chapter is divided into some parts that deal with different types of situations. The first of which deals with unlawful assemblies. So what is an unlawful assembly? Now according to section 141 of IPC, it is a gathering of 5 or more persons for the purpose of a number of unlawful acts that is mentioned therein. We'll read about it in the IPC. Now here in section 129, it talks about dispersal of assembly by the use of civil force. So it says any executive magistrate or the officer in charge of a police station, or in the absence of such officer, any other police officer not below the rank of a sub-inspector. So 3 persons are mentioned here who can do this. The first being the executive magistrate, the second being the officer in charge of a police station, and the third being any other police officer who is not below the rank of a sub-inspector if such officer in charge of the police station is not available or is absent. Then these 3 people can command any unlawful assembly or any assembly of 5 or more persons that is likely to cause disturbance to the public peace to disperse. So it will order to disperse those persons, and it will be the duty of the members of such assembly to disperse accordingly. Now subsection 2 says that if upon being so commanded, any such assembly does not disperse or shows determination or conducts itself in such a manner that it becomes evident from their showcase of determination that they will not disperse according to such command. So in these cases, the executive magistrate or the police officer so referred in subsection 1 may proceed to disperse such assembly by force. So they will apply force to make them disperse and may require assistance of any male person. So an assistance can also be taken from any male person, not female person, male person who is not an officer or member of the armed forces. So he may be a general person. Now if necessary, the officer in charge or the executive magistrate may also arrest and confine the persons who were ordered to disperse or was forming part of such assembly, and they may also be punished according to law. Now section 130 says that use of armed forces to disperse assembly. It says that if any such assembly cannot be otherwise dispersed or it is necessary for the public security that it should be dispersed, then the executive magistrate of the highest rank who is present there may cause it to be dispersed by the armed forces. So the use of armed forces can be done here. Now subsection 2 says such magistrate may require any officer in command of any such group of persons belonging to the armed forces. So the armed forces will be engaged, and any commanding officer of such group of armed forces will be required by the magistrate so ordering to disperse the assembly to help him, and he may also command such armed forces through that commanding officer to arrest and confine the persons those are forming part of the unlawful assembly that is directed to disperse, or if necessary, then the arrest and confinement of the members of such unlawful assembly may also be done according to law. Also subsection 3 says that every such officer of the armed forces shall obey such requisition in such manner as he thinks fit. So, the commanding officer of the armed forces will have to obey such order of that magistrate, and he shall use as little force as necessary, and he may injure the person and property as little as he can, to disperse the assembly and to arrest and detain such persons who are forming part of such assembly. Now, section 131 clearly mentions about the powers of certain armed forces officers to disperse such an assembly. So, when the public security is manifestly endangered, so we are talking here about extreme situations, by any such assembly, and no executive magistrate cannot be communicated with. So, there is no executive magistrate whom he can communicate with, and any such officer, if he is commissioned or present there, he may disperse such assembly with the help of the armed forces under his command, and may arrest and confine the persons who are forming part of it. So, where no executive magistrate is present or can be communicated with, then the commanding officer of such armed forces will take the matter into his own hands, and he may apply force to disperse such assembly and confine or arrest any persons who are forming part of it. But if while he is so acting under this section, and it becomes practicable for him to communicate with an executive magistrate, we are talking about subsequent situations where he can establish a communication with an executive magistrate, then from that point of time he shall do so and shall therefore obey the instructions of the magistrate. So, he will no longer be acting on his own, he will be taking orders from the executive magistrate he just established communication with, and he will do as per what he is told to do. As to whether he shall continue or not continue such action will be instructed by such executive magistrate, and the commanding officer shall thereafter work as per the instruction of such magistrate. Now, section 132 is basically an immunity section for the persons working under the foregoing sections, as it talks about protection against prosecution for acts done under the preceding sections. It says, no prosecution against any such person so acting shall be taken or instituted before any criminal court except. So, generally no prosecution will be taken against any such person who is so acting in the foregoing sections, but the exceptions are that whether with the sanction of the central government, where such officer is an officer of or member of the armed forces. So, in cases of armed forces, the sanction of the central government must be taken on a prior basis, and with the sanction of the state government in any other case. Also, subsection 2 says, no executive magistrate or police officer acting under any of the said sections in good faith, no person doing any act in good faith in compliance with requisition under section 129 or 130, no officer of the armed forces acting under section 131 in good faith, and no member of the armed forces doing any act in obedience to any order which he was bound to obey. So, in all these cases, whether they were acting under good faith or he was a member of the armed forces and he was in obedience to follow an order which he was bound to follow, then in all these cases they shall not be deemed to have thereby committed any offense. So, subsection 3 talks about some expressions or explanations of some particular terms. So, the first expression is armed forces. It means the military, naval and air forces operating as land forces and includes any other armed forces of the Union so operating. So, armed forces means the military, the navy, the air force and any other land force that includes or forms part any of the armed forces of the Union. Now, the second explanation is about officer. So, officer in relation to armed forces means a person who is commissioned, gazetted or in pay as an officer of the armed forces. So he is an officer of the armed forces, and this expression officer also includes a junior commissioned officer, a warrant officer, a petty officer, and a non-commissioned officer and a non-gazetted officer as well. So all these officers come under the term officer. And the term member means, in relation to the armed forces, a person who is other than an officer and is in the armed forces. So member means any other person who is a part of the armed forces but not an officer. Now the next part talks about public nuisances. So section 133 specifies the conditional order for removal of nuisance in some particular situations. So in order to understand this section, we need to first understand what is basically classified as nuisance under these sections. So all these following cases are considered as nuisance. What are they? Let's go into the details. That any unlawful obstruction or nuisance should be removed from any public place or from any way, river or channel which is lawfully used by public. So we should understand from this clause that there is a public place or a way or a river or a channel that is lawfully used by the public, and there is any unlawful obstruction or nuisance that is happening in that particular river, channel, public place or way, or that the conduct of any trade or occupation or keeping of any goods or merchandise is injurious to the health or physical comfort of the community. So there is any trade or occupation which is going on, and certain kinds of goods or merchandise are there, kept there, which is injurious to the health or physical comfort of the community. And in consequence of such trade or occupation, if they are not prohibited or regulated or removed, then it will be hazardous to such community. Or that the construction of any building or disposal of any substance is likely to occasion configuration or explosion, and these should be prevented or stopped. So there is a fear of explosion or any other configuration that is likely to occasion because of the construction of any building or disposal of any substance, and it needs to be prevented or stopped. Also that any building, tent or structure or any tree is in such a condition that it is likely to fall and thereby cause injury to person living or carrying on business in the neighborhood or passing by. So there is any tree, structure, tent or building that is in a very dangerous condition that it may break and fall and thereby cause injury to the persons who are living there or carrying on business in that neighborhood or merely passing by, and that in consequence the removal, repair or support of such building, tent or structure or removal of support of such tree is necessary. So that the removal is necessary, and that any tank, well or excavation adjacent to any such way or public place should be fenced. So there is a tank or a well or an excavation, a work of digging is happening there, and it shall be fenced because it is next to or adjacent to a way or public place, and it may cause danger to the public. Any public may fall into it or should otherwise hurt himself due to such tank, well or excavation that is open, and that any dangerous animal should be destroyed, confined or otherwise disposed of. So there is maybe a dangerous animal who is roaming around and it must be somehow confined or destroyed or disposed of. So in all these cases, such magistrate may make an conditional order requiring the person who is causing such obstruction or nuisance or carrying on such trade or occupation or keeping such goods or merchandise, or owning, possessing, or controlling such building, tent, structure, substance, tank, well, excavation, or owning or possessing such animal or tree, the magistrate may make a conditional order upon such person to remove such obstruction or nuisance, or prevent that person from carrying on such occupation or trade, or to prevent or stop him from constructing such building, or prevent him from disposing of such substance, or to remove, repair, or support such building, tent, or structure, or such tree, or he may also be directed to fence such tank, well, or excavation, or he may also be ordered to destroy, confine, or dispose of such dangerous animal. So an order of these things will be passed against such person who is causing these kind of nuisances, and if he objects to do so, or to appear before himself or some other executive magistrate subordinate to him at a fixed place or time and show cause, then the magistrate will pass an order to show cause that person as to why the order should not be made absolute on him. Now, no order duly made by a magistrate under this section shall be called in question in any civil court. So, it is not the jurisdiction of a civil court to interfere into an order that is duly made by a magistrate under this section. Now, explanation says that a public place includes also property belonging to the state. So, the properties that belong to the state also fall within a public place, or any camping ground, or a ground that is left unoccupied for sanitary or recreative purposes. So, all these places also come under the explanation of public place. Now, section 134 says that an order passed under section 133 shall, if practicable, be served upon the person against whom it is made, in the manner that is provided for a service of summon. So, it will be served upon the person against whom it is made in the form of a service of summon. And if such order cannot be so served, then it shall be notified by proclamation. We have already read about the conditions of proclamation in the foregoing videos, that how a proclamation is executed. So, it shall be published in such a manner as the state government may by rules direct, and a copy thereof shall be struck up at such place or places as may be fittest for conveying the information to such persons. So, either it will be affixed on a conspicuous place in the parts that he reside on his house or the court premises, or it will be proclaimed in an area that he frequently visits or carries on his trade or resides or is believed to do so, etc. Now, section 135 says that a person to whom order is addressed to obey or show cause shall perform within the time and in the manner specified in the order the act directed thereby, or appear in accordance with such order and show cause against the same. So, the person is directed to do something and he shall act accordingly or perform accordingly within the time and manner specified in the order, or he may also appear in accordance with such order and show cause against the same. Now, what will happen if he fails to do so? Section 136 says that consequences of his failing to do so would make him liable to the penalty prescribed in that behalf in section 188 of the Indian Penal Code, and the order shall be made absolute. So, it will be discharged with a penalty in that behalf under section 188 of the Indian Penal Code. So, section 188 of the Indian Penal Code will be applied here. Now, what happens when the person against whom an order is made under section 133 turns up before the court? By complying the summon that was served upon him to show cause. So, under section 137, the procedure where existence of a public right is denied is mentioned herein. it says where such person turns up before the magistrate, then the magistrate shall, on the appearance of that person before him against whom the order was made under section 133, question him. So the magistrate will question that person as to whether he denies the existence of any public right in respect of the way, river, channel or place, and if that person does deny, then the magistrate shall, before proceeding under section 138, inquire into the matter. So the magistrate will inquire into the matter as to why that person is denying such a public right. Now subsection 2 says that if upon holding such inquiry the magistrate finds that there is any reliable evidence in support of that denial of such person, then the magistrate shall stay the proceedings until the matter of such existence of right has been decided by a competent court. So the magistrate will not decide the entire matter, the magistrate will only stay the proceedings until such existence of such right has been decided by a competent court. So if it is regarding a public way or a river or a channel or a place, then it falls under the jurisdiction of a civil court. Then that will be considered as a competent court, and such existence of right will be determined by such competent court, and the magistrate will only stay the proceedings if he finds that there are reliable evidence in support of such denial of that person. But if he finds that there is no such evidence, then the magistrate shall proceed with the said proceedings regarding section 138. So he will dispose of the matter following the procedure as laid down in section 138. Now subsection 3 says that a person who has, on being questioned by a magistrate, so when the magistrate has questioned that person whether you can provide evidence as to why you are denying the existence of a public right, and such person has failed to deny the existence of a public right, or who has made such a denial but failed to adduce reliable evidence in support thereof, then that person shall not be permitted to make any such denial in the subsequent proceedings. Now what is written in section 138 that we are talking about right now? So it contains the procedure where he appears to show cause. So the person, when he appears before the magistrate to show cause, then in that case the magistrate shall take evidence in the matter as a summon case. If the magistrate is satisfied that the order is reasonable and proper, then he will make that order absolute with or without modification. But if the magistrate is not so satisfied, then no further proceedings shall be taken in the case. Now section 139 is a small section. It says power of magistrate to direct local investigation and examination of an expert. So the magistrate, for the purposes of section 137 and 138, in the foregoing cases that we are talking about, in those cases the magistrate can direct a local investigation to be made by such person as he thinks fit, or to summon and examine an expert. So he can summon and examine an expert in this case, or he may direct a local investigation. Both of these powers are invested in that magistrate for the purposes of dealing with the cases under section 137 and 138. Now section 140 says that the magistrate has power to furnish written instructions. So where the magistrate directs a local investigation, like we had read in the previous section, where the magistrate directs any such local investigation as mentioned aforesaid, then he may also furnish such person with such written instructions as he may deem necessary for his guidance. So he may furnish certain written instructions, and he may declare by whom the whole or any part of the necessary expenses for holding such local investigation shall be paid. So who will pay that necessary expense for the local investigation will also be determined by the magistrate and declared thereby. Now the person who was holding the local investigation would submit a report thereby before that magistrate. that such and such has been founded by him during that local investigation. He will submit a report in regard to that, and that report will be read as evidence in the case. So that report will be considered as an evidence for that case. And where the magistrate summons and examines an expert under section 139, then the magistrate will also direct as to who will pay the costs of such summoning and examination. Now section 141 talks about the procedure on order being made absolute and consequences of disobedience. So when an order that was made under section 136 or 138 has been made absolute, then the magistrate shall give notice to the same person against whom the order was so made absolute, and the magistrate shall further require him to perform the act that is directed by the order within a time that is fixed in the notice, and the magistrate will also inform him that in case of disobedience he will be liable to penalty provided by section 188 of the Indian Penal Code. So if he disobeys such order, then he will be liable to penalty, and that will be dealt under section 188 of IPC. Now subsection 2 says that if such act is not performed within the fixed time, so the magistrate has passed an order and the person has failed to perform it. So in that case, the magistrate may cause it to be performed and may recover the cost of performing it by either sale of any building, goods or other property removed by this order, or by the sale of any other movable property of such person within or without such magistrate's local jurisdiction. Now if it is within the local jurisdiction of such magistrate, then it is well and good, and if it is outside the jurisdiction of such local magistrate, then such magistrate will inform the magistrate having local jurisdiction of that property by an order authorizing the attachment and sale of such property, and such other magistrate who is within the local jurisdiction of that property will endorse such property, and after that the attachment will be done. And no suit shall lie in respect of anything done in good faith under this section. So the subsection 3 is an immunity granted under this section. Now what does section 142 say? It says injunction pending inquiry. So if a magistrate making such order under section 133 considers that immediate measures should be taken to prevent imminent danger or injury of a serious kind to the public, so there is a possibility of imminent danger or injury of serious kind to the public, and it is found by the magistrate that to prevent such imminent danger or serious kind of injury an immediate measure should be taken, then in that case he may issue an injunction to the person against whom such order was made. So an injunction order may also be passed alongside the main order against that same person, and such person by that order will be made as is required to obviate or prevent such danger or injury pending the determination of such matter. So during the pendency of the determination of such matter, that person will still be prevented from causing such danger or injury through an order of injunction. Now subsection 2 says that if such person disobeys such injunction, then the magistrate may either himself or by cause do anything that is necessary to prevent such danger or such injury to the public. And immunity is also given in this section under the subsection 3, that no suit shall lie in respect of anything that is done in good faith by a magistrate under this section. Now section 143 says that a magistrate may prohibit repetition or continuance of public nuisance. So it is in the power of a district magistrate or a subdivisional magistrate or any other executive magistrate empowered by the state government, or the district magistrate in this behalf may order any person not to repeat or continue a public nuisance as defined in the Indian Penal Code or any other special or local law. So it is the power of the district magistrate, subdivisional magistrate, or any other executive magistrate to prevent the repetition or continuance of a public nuisance. The next part talks about urgent cases of nuisance or apprehended danger. So there is only one section, that is section 144. Now this section is extremely important because it also has practical applications. So section 144 says power to issue order in urgent cases of nuisance or apprehended danger. So the district magistrate, the subdivisional magistrate, or other executive magistrate, if these magistrates finds out that there is sufficient ground for proceedings under this section, so there are sufficient grounds and immediate prevention or speedy remedy is desirable. So he also finds out that immediate prevention of a certain act or a speedy remedy for a problem is desirable. So he may by a written order, so he will pass a written order stating the material facts of the case and served in the manner provided in section 134. So the procedure will be same as section 134. And by this written order, such magistrate will direct any person to abstain from a certain act or to take certain order with respect to certain property in his possession or under his management. So he will direct a person to abstain from a certain act or to not to do a certain act, or he may also take certain order with respect to a property that is in the possession or under the management of such person against whom the order is made. And if such magistrate considers that such direction is likely to prevent or tends to prevent obstruction, annoyance, or injury to any person who is lawfully employed, or danger to human life, or health or safety, or a disturbance of the public tranquility, or a riot or affray. So, in which cases this magistrate will pass such an order? If he considers that such direction will prevent. What will it prevent? Obstruction, annoyance, or injury to any person who is lawfully employed, or it may also prevent danger to human life or health and safety, or it may also prevent disturbance of the public tranquility, or prevent a riot, or prevent an affray. Now, can this order be passed ex parte? Yes. Subsection 2 says that an order under this section in cases of emergency or where the circumstances do not admit of serving a notice in due time upon the person against whom such order is directed. So it can be passed ex parte in two cases where it is of extreme emergency or where the service of notice upon the person will take unnecessary time or make it unnecessary delayed in these cases. Now what will be the application of this order? Now this order under subsection 3 it is said that this order may be directed to a particular individual or to a person who is residing in a particular place or area or to the public generally when frequenting or visiting a particular place or area. So this section may be applied against an individual, a group of persons, or an entire locality. Now how long will that order continue to remain in force? Subsection 4 says that no order under this section shall remain in force more than 2 months from the making thereof. So when such an order under section 144 is passed, then such order will automatically stand vacated after 2 months. So the duration of application of this section will be for 2 months. Now the proviso to subsection 4 also says that when it is necessary to do so for preventing danger to human life, health, or safety, or prevent a riot or affray, then such section shall remain in force for a further period not exceeding 6 months. So this section can be extended. We have previously read that this section has an application for 2 months. After 2 months, it automatically stands vacated. But in cases of danger to human life, health, or safety, or riot or affray, this section can remain for a further period of 6 months, not exceeding 6 months. So, for a further 6 months, this can be extended. Now, can this section stand vacated before its prescribed period? So, any magistrate under subsection 5, either on his own motion or on the application of a person. So, the magistrate can either suo motu pass an order or on the application pass an order that will alter or rescind any such order that is passed under 144 by himself or by any other magistrate who is subordinate to him or who is the predecessor in office. Now, subsection 6 says that the state government also has the power to rescind or alter any order made under proviso to subsection 4, either on its own motion or on the application of any person. So, other than the magistrate, the state government also has these powers. Now, subsection 7 says that when an application under subsection 5 or subsection 6 is received to alter or rescind such order, then the state government or the magistrate, as the case may be, shall afford to the applicant, the person who has applied for such alteration or who is telling to rescind the order, then the magistrate or the state government shall afford to such applicant an early opportunity of appearing before him, either in person or by pleader, showing cause against the order. So you will have to show cause as to why he wants to alter or rescind the order by appearing personally or by pleader. And if the magistrate or the state government, as the case may be, rejects the application wholly or in part, he or it shall record in writing the reasons for so doing. So the state government or the magistrate, if they vacate, reject or alter or rescind any part of that order or the order in whole, then they will have to also record the reasons in writing for doing so. Now the next part is regarding disputes as to immovable property. So this portion of this chapter talks about any dispute that is related to any immovable property. So section 145 says that procedure where dispute concerning land or water is likely to cause a breach of peace. So there is a dispute concerning an immovable property, which is land or water, and due to such dispute there is a chance of causing breach of peace. So whenever an executive magistrate is satisfied from a police report or other information, so either a police can file a report or a person can file a application before such magistrate, and due to such information or police report he comes to know about the breach of peace that is existing concerning any land or water or any boundary of such land or water thereof within his local jurisdiction, then in such information or a police report that he has received, he can make an order regarding such dispute in writing, stating the grounds therein, that why he is satisfied that there is a dispute, and requiring the parties that are concerned in such dispute to attend his court in person or by pleader. So he may also cause the parties to appear before him personally or through pleader on a specified date and time, and to put in a written statement as to their respective claims. So he will also require those parties that both of you put in your written statements. That means you put down your reasons of doing such dispute in a written form, which we call written statements, and submit it before me, so that out of such respective claims as those persons are making, the fact of actual possession of the subject of dispute comes out. So this will be the entire procedure. Now there are certain properties that include under the expression land or water. So subsection 2 says, for the purposes of this section, buildings, markets, fisheries, crops or other produce of land and rents or profits of any such property will include the expression land or water. So all these things will include in that expression land or water. Now subsection 3 says that a copy of the order that was passed by the magistrate after hearing both the sides shall be provided by this court in the manner of a summon. So it will be served like a summon upon such person or persons as the magistrate may direct. And at least one copy shall be published for being affixed to some conspicuous place or near the subject of dispute. So both the parties will be served summons, and through such summon that order will be served upon them. And also, in addition to that, an extra copy will be published and affixed to the conspicuous place near the subject of dispute. So say for example the subject of dispute is a piece of land. So an order will be published and the copy of such order will be affixed in front of such land in a conspicuous place where everyone can see it. Now subsection 4 says that the magistrate after all these things will peruse the statements of the parties, hear both the parties, receive all or any such evidence that may be produced by them, and take further such evidence as it is necessary and then decide. So the magistrate will totally inquire into the matter by perusing the statements of the parties, hearing both the parties, receiving any or all such evidences that are produced by them, and take such further evidence and then decide. Now there is a proviso that says that whenever it appears to the magistrate that any party was forcibly or wrongfully dispossessed within 2 months next before the date on which such police report was filed or that information was received. So the magistrate has either received an information through an application, or there is a police report that has informed the magistrate about such event. Now if he finds that after receiving such complaint or police report within 2 months from the date of receiving such application or police report by the magistrate, that any party concerned to that particular event has been forcibly or wrongfully dispossessed from his property. So either he was removed from such property by force or in a wrongful manner and he was dispossessed, then the magistrate consider that such party who was dispossessed was in possession or had been in possession since the date of his order under subsection 1. Now what does subsection 5 say? It says this entire section will not restrict any party to attend or any party who is interested to show that no such dispute had existed or presently exists, that is informed to the magistrate or that is mentioned in that police report that there is no such dispute. Any party can show it. Any party who is required to attend or any party who is interested in the subject matter. And in such case the magistrate shall cancel his said order. So if the magistrate is satisfied that yes, there is no dispute that exists or had existed, then he shall cancel his said order and all further proceedings upon that subject matter shall be stayed. So it will be put to an stay. But subject to such cancellation, the order of the magistrate under subsection 1 shall be final. Now subsection 6 says that if the magistrate decides from the evidences or the supporting documents that is placed before him. If he decides from all these evidences that one of those parties was or should have been in such possession of the said subject. So either he was in possession of the said subject or he should be. Considering the documents that he has produced before the magistrate is of the satisfaction that he was the possessor of that property or he should have been the possessor of the property. That is the subject matter of the dispute. Then he shall issue an order declaring that such party is to be entitled to possession. Until what amount of time? Until evicted therefrom in due course of law. So unless and until such person is evicted from such property in due course of law, then until and unless he is so evicted, then he will be entitled to the possession of such property, and any disturbances regarding his unlawful eviction will be forbidden. And if such party was forcibly or wrongfully dispossessed, then such possession will also be restored by such magistrate. Now subsection 6 clause B says that the order that was made under this subsection shall be served and published in the same manner as it is laid down in subsection 3. Now subsection 7 talks about a contingency where the party to any such proceeding dies. So if such party dies, then the magistrate may cause the legal representative of the deceased party to continue with the proceedings. So the legal representatives will take over. Now if there is a dispute or a question arises that who shall be the legal representative of such deceased party, then all persons who are claiming to be representatives of the deceased party shall be made parties thereto. Irrespective of the fact, all the persons that are claiming to be representatives will be made parties thereto. Now we know there will always be a contingency where the property will be of subject to natural decay or speedy decay. Then in that case, the magistrate who is of the opinion that the subject matter of the dispute is any crop or produce of the property and it is subject to speedy and natural decay, then he may make an order for the proper custody or sale of such property, and upon the completion of such enquiry shall make such order for disposal of such property or the sale proceeds thereof. So either he will sell the property, and after the proceedings had ended, then he will forward the sale proceed to the eligible party, or he may dispose the property or give a proper custody to a person who is entitled to hold so. Now subsection 9 says that the magistrate may, if he thinks fit, then at any stage of the proceedings under this section, he may issue a summon to a witness directing him to attend or to produce any document or thing before him, if a party therefore applies before the magistrate. So on the application of either party and at any stage of the proceedings, if he thinks fit, then the magistrate will issue a summon to any witness to direct him to attend personally or produce any document or thing. And subsection 10 says that nothing in this section shall be deemed to be in derogation of power of the magistrate to proceed under section 107. So section 107 is immune hereby. Now section 146 says power to attach subject of dispute and to appoint receiver. So attachment of the property that is in subject matter of the dispute, and in regard to such attachment, an appointment of receiver can be done under this section 146. So if the magistrate considers that the case is of extreme emergency, so if the magistrate considers that the case is of emergency, or if he decides that none of the parties was in possession of such property that is the subject matter of the dispute, or he is unable to satisfy himself as to which of them was then in possession. So either the possession was not clear as to who was in possession, or if it is found that none of the parties were in possession, or if it is of emergency, the case is of emergency. In these three cases, he may attach the subject matter of such dispute, that property, until a competent court has determined the rights of the parties thereto with regard to the person entitled to possession. So it is not the duty of the magistrate to find out who is the actual possessor of such property. A competent court will determine the rights of the parties, and until then, that magistrate may attach the property, that is subject matter of the dispute. So the proviso says that such magistrate may also withdraw the attachment of the property at any time if he is satisfied there is no longer any likelihood of breach of peace with regard to the subject matter of the dispute. Now subsection 2 says that when the magistrate attaches the subject matter of the dispute, that property, then if no receiver in relation to such property has been appointed by any civil court, so if the civil court has not already appointed a receiver, then the magistrate may make such arrangements as he considers proper for looking after the property. So a person is needed to look after the property. So a receiver will be appointed by the magistrate if already a civil court has not appointed any such receiver. Then that receiver will be appointed by the magistrate, and that receiver will be subject to the control of the magistrate, and such magistrate regarding such receiver will be appointed with all the powers that are provided under the Code of Civil Procedure. Now there is a contingency that says if the civil court subsequently appoints a receiver, then we should understand this, that the civil court has a more proper jurisdiction over the subject matter of such property, or the civil court is more competent in this regard than the magistrate. And if such magistrate had appointed a receiver and subsequently the civil court appoints a receiver again, then the magistrate shall order the receiver appointed by him to hand over the possession of the subject matter of the dispute to the receiver that is appointed by the civil court. So the receiver of the magistrate, the receiver that was appointed by the magistrate, will hand over the possession of that property to the receiver that was appointed by the civil court. And the magistrate may make such other incidental or consequential orders as may be just. Now here in section 145 we had already talked about any dispute that is concerning the land or water as a property, and there is a breach of peace that is likely to happen. So the same thing will happen in case of section 147. It says dispute concerning right of use of land or water. So if you go through the subsection 1, then you will understand that same things are written here that is written in section 145's subsection 1. The only difference is that subsection 1 of section 147 talks about an easement right, or a right to use any kind of land or water. The procedures and the events are same and identical. Okay, so if the magistrate receives an information or a police report that there is a breach of peace that is existing regarding any alleged right of use of land or water, or whether such right that is claimed, it is claimed as an easement right, then he shall accordingly pass an order in writing just like section 145 and require the parties to dispute to attend before the court in person or in pleader in a specified date and time, and put written statements to their respective claims. Now if you read the explanation, you will understand why I was saying that the proceedings under section 147 are same and identical to that of section 145. It says the expression land or water has the same meaning that is given to in subsection 2 of section 145. If you read that section again, you will understand that the expressions are same and identical. Now subsection 2 also says that in this case the magistrate will then peruse the statement, hear the parties, receive all such evidences as put forward by them, and consider the effect of such evidence, take further evidence. So all these things we have already read in section 145, and this will be applied here as well. The same procedure will be followed in section 147. It also says in subsection 3 that if it appears to a magistrate that such right exists, then he may make an order prohibiting any interference with such exercise of right, and including in a proper case order the removal of any obstruction in the exercise of such right. We have already read in subsection 3 that the magistrate will prohibit the interference of such exercise of right if a proper case is available, and order the removal of any obstruction in the exercise of such right. But he will not do so if the right is exercised throughout the year or exercised in particular seasons or occasions. Then the exception will be, so when will the magistrate obstruct any right that is exercised throughout the year? When such right is not exercised for 3 months preceding such information or police report that is received by the magistrate in this regard, or when it was not used in the previous season or previous occasion, when such right is exercised in particular seasons or occasions. Now subsection 4 says that where the proceedings that has commenced under subsection 1 of 145, the magistrate finds out that the dispute is regarding a right of use of land or water, then he may record his reasons and continue with the proceedings as mentioned in subsection 1 of 145. So it will be transferred under the section. And where in any proceedings that has commenced under subsection 1, the magistrate finds that the dispute should be dealt with under section 145, then after recording his reasons, he will continue with the proceedings as if it was commenced under section 145 subsection 1. So the magistrate can transfer the proceedings under the section 145. Now let's move on to the last section of this chapter. It is section 148 that talks about local inquiry. So we have already gone through a section previously where we have read about local inquiries. It says whenever it appears necessary to a magistrate that a local inquiry needs to happen under section 145, 146 or 147 for the purposes of these sections, then a district magistrate, a subdivisional magistrate or any other magistrate subordinate to him may be directed to make an inquiry and furnish with such written instructions as may seem necessary for the case, and may declare by whom the whole or any part of such expenses of the local inquiry will be paid. Now, the report of the person so deputed may be read as evidence in the case. We know that after holding such local inquiry, the person who was holding such local inquiry will submit a report before the magistrate, and such report will be taken as evidence in the case. Now, when any cost has been incurred by any party to the proceedings under these sections 145, 146 and 147, the magistrate who is passing a decision may direct by whom such cost will have to be paid, and whether such party or any other party to the proceedings, whether wholly or in partly or proportionally, such cost may include any expense in respect of witness or pleader's fee if the court thinks it reasonable. Okay, so that will also have to be paid. So that's all in this video. If you like my videos, then don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching this video.